I paid my first income tax when I was 13, so I guess I got brainwashed at the time. And it doesn't bother me a lot to be paying taxes. I think personally, I'm undertaxed in relation to what the society has delivered to me. And I don't send along any voluntary payments to the IRS. I want you to understand, but I really do. I mean, there's nobody I want to trade places with, and because their tax situation is better than mine. One thing I really find reprehensible is the people that make a lot of money in this country, and then leave to get in other tax jurisdictions or something like this. But I'm a little crazy. I don't mind paying taxes.
It is certainly true that in the last 5 to 10 years that the disparity in income has widened significantly, and that the tax breaks for the wealthy have been extraordinary. I've pointed out in the past that most of the members of the Forbes 400, myself included, pay a lower percentage of their income to the U.S. government, counting Social Security taxes, than does the receptionist that works in their office. That was not true 30 years ago, and I don't think it's something that should be true in a rich society, but it has happened. And I just computed my 2005 return. In 2004, and I have no tax shelters. I don't have a tax advisor. I just do things, and at the end of the year I add it all up. In 2004, my rate was the lowest of the 15 or 16 people in the office, and in 2005 my rate was even lower. And that's courtesy of the U.S. government. That's not courtesy of a lot of tax write-offs or anything of the sort. And I think it's crazy, and I don't think the American people understand it very well. And I think that if they did understand it, they should and would be quite unhappy about it. So I think that the lower incomes, median people making medium amounts of income, have not shared in the prosperity of the last decade or so in a way that's all proportional to the way the wealthy have participated in it.
I've asked you, why can't we just tax you at 10% of your wealth? And that didn't go over very well with you. The 10% of all this wealth would bring in quite a bit of money too. I figure we get about $5 billion from you alone, right?
Yeah, that's true. And actually, wealth tax is tough to enforce. I mean, it's very hard to say what every farm is worth, or every private business is worth. I don't particularly favor a wealth tax, but I would have no objection to it. I mean, if 10% of my wealth and 10% of everybody's wealth went to the government, I don't think that's the best system.
Talk of the Buffett Rule is all over newspapers and TV. But I believe your concept of what should happen to taxation of very high earners is different from what is now promulgated as the Buffett Rule. Could you clear us up on this?
Basically, the proposal is that people that make very large incomes pay a rate that is commensurate with what people think is paid by people with those incomes. I mean, I think most people believe, when they look at the tax rates and all that if you're making $30 or $40 or $50 million a year, that you're probably paying tax rates in the 30% area, at least. And many people are. But the figures are such that if you look at the most recent year and you aggregate both payroll and income taxes, because they both go to the federal government on your behalf. If you take the 400 largest incomes in the United States, they average $270 million each. That's per person, $270 million each. 131 of those 400 paid tax rates that were below 15%. Now, counting payroll taxes too. So under the Buffett rule, we would have a minimum tax only for these very, very high earners that essentially would restore their rate to what it used to be. Back in 1992, when the average income of the top 400 was only 45 million, there were only 16 out of the 400 that were at 15% or below. But now there's 131. There's still plenty of them that are paying in the 30s. I wouldn't touch them. But I would say that when we're asking for shared sacrifice from the American public, when we're telling people that we formerly told we're given promises on Social Security and Medicare and various things, and we're telling them we're sorry, but we kind of overpromised and we're going to have to cut back a little, I would at least make sure that the people with these huge incomes get taxed at a rate that is commensurate with the way they used to be taxed not that long ago.
I don't want to name some of my friends that are in these similar low rates, but I think they should be paying at the rates that the people who work in this warehouse pay, and they still have a big break. The big break is they don't pay payroll taxes, and payroll taxes are, if we take in $2.6 trillion this year, payroll taxes will be a third of that roughly. They're not quite as much as individual income tax.
Are you suggesting there shouldn't be a limit on the amount of income for where the payroll tax ends? What is it, 115,000 or something right now?
It's less than that. It's around 100,000. So it catches many of the people in our office have spouses that work, and they get paid. They get the payroll tax too. So on the first 200,000 for many families, 15.3%. I mean that.
But is the unfairness that they shouldn't be paying that high of a rate, or you think there should be no limit on that?
I just think that it depends whether you change the whole code in some way. But I think under the code as it presently stands, a minimum tax on very high incomes is a start in getting more equity in the tax code.